In the 5th year of my marriage to Arthur Miller, the idealized love of his past returned. The night our daughter burned with a fever, Arthur still chose to brave the pouring rain to be with her. That woman had won the bet. Outside, a thunderstorm raged. I pleaded with my husband. Arthur, I'm begging you, please stay home with Jasmine tonight, please. She has a high fever, and all she wants is for her daddy to be with her for one night. Tears and snot streamed down my face as I clutched the corner of his shirt, desperately trying to use our daughter to keep him here. Arthur looked at our daughter, her face flushed red on the sofa, and fell silent for a moment. A flicker of hope ignited within me. Stay, I prayed over and over, just for tonight. Just one night is enough. But when Arthur looked up, his expression had changed. A flash of lightning illuminated his cold eyes. I'm not a doctor. My staying here won't make her fever go down. Besides, it's just a high fever. Charlotte was in a car accident. Who needs me more? Do I even need to say it? Arthur pried my hand away. Be more understanding. Without a second thought, he stepped into the rain, not even closing the door behind him. The wind and rain howled into the room, leaving me alone, staring blankly at the torn piece of fabric in my hand. Arthur and I met, got to know each other, and fell in love in college. We were so in sync that a single glance was enough to know what the other was thinking. After graduation, we pursued our master's degrees in different cities. Despite the friction and arguments, he would always show up under my dorm building the day after a fight, holding a bouquet of white hyacinths, rain or shine. As soon as we graduated, my father arranged a job for Arthur. We got our marriage certificate and soon had the fruit of our love. Everything was so unbelievably smooth that for a time, I believed I was the luckiest person in the world. But fate seemed to enjoy playing jokes on me. At the peak of my happiness, the name Charlotte Hayes slashed through my reality like a knife, revealing the bloody truth. What I saw as a love at first sight encounter was in Arthur's eyes a case of the childhood sweetheart losing out to the faded newcomer. I was just a substitute for his first love. Mommy, my daughter's weak call brought me back. I quickly wiped away my tears and crawled to her side, gently dabbing the sweat from her bangs. Mommy, why is Daddy so busy? Doesn't he even have one night to spend with me? I held back my emotions, but I couldn't bring myself to lie to her innocent, hopeful face. I didn't know how to explain that her daddy had abandoned his sick wife and daughter for his childhood sweetheart. I didn't know how to sugarcoat the disgusting fact that her mommy was just a stand-in for an old flame. I didn't know how to tell her that mommy had already fought and lost. A couple of days ago, I had taken the initiative to talk to Charlotte. I didn't want to fight with her, but I wanted to make a bet with myself. If, on our anniversary, Arthur still chose to abandon me for her, then there would be nothing left for me to hold on to. I would treat all our years together, through thick and thin, as nothing more than a beautiful dream. Judging by today's events, the outcome was likely to be just as I had expected. My daughter painstakingly lifted her hot little hand to wipe the tear from the corner of my eye. Mommy, I won't ask any more. Let's go to the hospital. In the hospital room, I stared blankly at my sleeping daughter. I clutched the diagnosis my best friend, Dr. Susan Bell, had just given me. The words colon cancer sent a chill down my spine as if I had been plunged into an ice cave. For months, I had been suffering from inexplicable abdominal pain and diarrhea. I had only recently found the time to get a checkup at the hospital where Susan worked. I never expected to receive the worst possible news. Susan said only a few patients survive past 5 years. I pulled up my contacts, my emotions a turbulent sea that I had to calm before I dared to dial Arthur's number. The call connected. Before I could even speak, he cut me off, anxious to get a word in. As if to maintain his image, his tone was much softer than when he had left. I'm still busy. I'll be back to be with Jasmine soon. A 5-year-old should be more sensible. Don't spoil her too much. The dial tone buzzed in my ear. I gripped my phone tightly. In my line of sight, Arthur was carefully protecting the small, delicate woman in his arms. The scene was so beautiful and so piercing. Our daughter was burning with the fever, and his wife had just been diagnosed with cancer. Yet Arthur, the father and husband, was fussing over Charlotte Hayes's minor scrape. Charlotte spotted me, her eyes quickly curved into crescents as she walked towards me. "Grace, what are you doing at the hospital? What a coincidence!" She smiled like a nimble, harmless cat, but her eyes held an open challenge. She seemed confident that she had won our bet. I hid the diagnosis report, my voice calm. "Jasmine has a high fever. I brought her here to get checked." Hearing that Jasmine was sick, Charlotte shot a blaming glance at Arthur, then apologized to me. They looked more like a family than we did. "I'm so sorry. Arthur didn't tell me Jasmine was sick. If I'd known, I never would have told him about my car accident. I told him it was just a minor scrape, but he insisted on coming to see for himself. But you know, I'm pregnant, and Arthur and I grew up together. He's always seen me as a little sister, so he's used to taking care of me. Grace, please don't overthink it." I hadn't said a word, and she had already painted me as the jealous, possessive wife. Arthur looked at me, my displeasure visibly growing even though I hadn't uttered a single word of rebuttal. Was the loser supposed to just accept the victor's mockery? This feeling of bitterness and anger was just like the first time I read Arthur's diary. In that diary, he had filled the pages with his boyish handwriting, documenting his joy and anticipation for Charlotte. All his plans for the future involved her. The shadow of Charlotte was everywhere in his youth. Their parents often joked about becoming in-laws. Charlotte liked to eat raw, spicy foods, which often messed with her period, so Arthur developed the habit of always carrying a sanitary pad with him. Charlotte liked to sleep in and would miss breakfast, so Arthur developed the habit of packing a lunchbox for her in the morning. Charlotte said that when she grew up, her house must be filled with green plants. So Arthur filled the balcony of our marital home with flowers and plants, which he wouldn't even let me touch. Charlotte said if she had a daughter when she grew up, her name must have the character Jia in it, which sounded like her own. Then, after the college entrance exams, Charlotte's name suddenly disappeared from Arthur's diary. In its place, my name appeared. In his diary, Arthur described me as having a smile that reminded him of his little trickster. My habit of skipping breakfast was just like his little trickster's. My tastes and aesthetics were similar to his little trickster's, but I was more trustworthy than the little trickster, and I cared about him more. If the little trickster didn't come back by next March, Arthur would marry me as a punishment for her. And so, in the blooming March of hyacinths, Arthur proposed to me. Arthur said I was like a delicate hyacinth sprite dancing in his gray, dull memories. I had always thought the hyacinth was our special flower, that Arthur had specifically chosen March for our wedding. Before this, we were the perfect couple everyone envied. Arthur's attentiveness and care earned me countless compliments on my good fortune. I never imagined the hyacinth was Arthur and Charlotte's little secret. What I saw as a blissful marriage was just Arthur's punishment for Charlotte for getting with someone else without a word. I, Grace Foster, was just the most convenient choice for Arthur, a placeholder in a world where, if it's not Charlotte, anyone will do. To this day, Arthur doesn't know I've read that diary. He probably still thinks I'm in the dark, completely smitten with the little ambiguous games he and Charlotte play. How laughable. What's even more laughable is that before tonight, I was convinced Arthur would never cheat, even though I was terrified by Charlotte's reappearance. He was a father now. The shackles of morality and responsibility would surely hold him back from going back to her. But now, I can't tell which of the three of us will break first. Charlotte's regret and envy were undisguised. She glanced at Arthur casually, teasing herself in a joking tone.
"I saw a jewelry box in Arthur's hand. He rarely gave me gifts. The few he had were all related to hyacinths. I saw this necklace in your shopping cart for a while. I bought it for you as an anniversary gift." A gentle smile played on his lips. I couldn't tell if he was smiling because I wasn't angry at Charlotte or if he was savoring the memory of his time alone with her just now. But our anniversary isn't today, I said, taking the box and setting it aside without the joyful, wide-eyed smile I used to have. Arthur's smile vanished. He grabbed my wrist as I was tucking in our daughter's blanket. Charlotte already explained. I was the one who insisted on seeing her. Who are you putting on that long face for? Quiet down. Jasmine just fell asleep, I said, a simple sentence that immediately extinguished his fire. He knew his behavior as a father tonight was out of line. He leaned down and loosely wrapped his arms around me. I'm sorry. I was inconsiderate today. It won't happen again. His expression softened slightly as I tried to hug him back, but the churning in my stomach was almost unbearable. The distinct scent of hyacinths from Charlotte made me want to vomit. I quickly pulled away from him. Arthur, the things you've said to me before, do they still count? Arthur subconsciously asked back, what things? I stared into his eyes and said word for word, I am the only wife you will ever have in this life. You will love me, cherish me, and never betray me forever. This was the promise Arthur repeated every anniversary. Arthur's hand stiffened. His gaze shifted away. After a long pause, he forced a smile and uttered 2 words. Of course. We both knew that empty words were not to be trusted. You can fool anyone, but you can't fool yourself in the end. I continued to interact with Arthur as usual. Every day I prepared the lunchbox he took to work. After work, I would have a hot meal ready on the table for him. The white shirts he changed out of would magically reappear clean in his closet. The clothes for his next day's cocktail party would be perfectly coordinated and placed by the shoe cabinet at the entrance. After years of being together, these mundane routines had become Arthur's habits. Perhaps the reason he was becoming inseparable from me wasn't love at all, but simply the long-enjoyed comfort of being cared for meticulously. The rest of my time I spent at the hospital with Jasmine. During this time, I kept asking Susan to keep my advanced colon cancer a secret. I didn't tell Jasmine because I was afraid of scaring her, and I didn't tell Arthur because I was afraid he would want to get rid of me sooner. I knew that after I died, Arthur would definitely remarry, and it was highly likely he would end up with Charlotte, but not now. Under my careful care, we were finally able to go home just before Jasmine's 5th birthday. As expected, I received a call from Arthur just before he was supposed to get off work. Grace, the company is having a cocktail party tonight. I forgot. You and Jasmine don't have to wait for me for dinner. But today was our 5th wedding anniversary, and also Jasmine's 4th birthday. Arthur remembered the cocktail party, but not these things. Or maybe he remembered, but simply didn't care. It seemed that ever since Charlotte came back, Arthur had suddenly become much busier. There was always a different reason. The reasons were always plausible and reasonable, leaving no room for complaint. Just like him. Mommy, does Daddy have something else to do tonight? Jasmine's face was clearly disappointed. Over the past year, Arthur had let Jasmine down more than once. On this same day last year, Arthur had promised to take Jasmine to the amusement park early, but was called away by Charlotte to fix a water pipe just as they were about to leave. That day, Jasmine secretly wiped away tears on the carousel, and her whispered words, "I wish Daddy could ride the carousel with me too," pierced my heart. After Charlotte returned, Arthur's presence at Jasmine's parent-teacher conferences disappeared. It got to the point where the teacher thought Jasmine's parents were divorced and carefully avoided mentioning the word "daddy" in front of her. Jasmine, who was always so sensible and obedient, insisted on seeing her father come home tonight. She took out the music box she had prepared long ago, the birthday cake, and some small games, and sat quietly on the living room sofa watching the door. However, midnight came and went without any news from Arthur. Jasmine listlessly blew out the birthday candles and went to bed. She didn't touch a single bite of the cake she had chosen so carefully. I tossed and turned in bed, unable to sleep. On a whim, I scrolled through my social media feed. The first post was Charlotte's bright, radiant smile, a 9-photo grid set against the backdrop of a cocktail party. In the bottom right corner, the hand she was holding revealed Arthur's wedding ring, the same as mine. Subtle, yet obvious. She might as well have captioned it, Charlotte had just returned to the country a year ago. Tonight's party was a good opportunity for her to establish herself in her career. She's already been through a terrible marriage. As her childhood friend, you should help her out. I had preempted all the excuses he had prepared. He looked at me with drunken, dazed eyes, at loss for words. There was a lipstick stain on his collar of his white shirt. I pointed it out, told him to take it off, and then got into bed, turning my back to him. Was this understanding version of me enough to meet the standard of sensible he had mentioned on that rainy night? Arthur stood back behind me in a daze for a long time before he finally started to move. A moment later, his hot, moist breath fanned across my neck as he effortlessly pulled me into his arms. I didn't dare move out of his embrace until I heard his even breathing behind me. The moonlight outside was bright and clear, the stars twinkling like my daughter's eyes. I stared for a long time before it finally dawned on me. I had not many years left to live. If I was unlucky, in less than 3 years there would be no more Grace Foster in this world. It didn't matter if I died. Everyone dies eventually. But what would happen to my daughter? Jasmine had just turned 5. I had to secure her future. Charlotte would not treat her well. The next morning at breakfast, a notification popped up on my phone's calendar, which I had left on the table. I glanced at it and quickly snatched up the phone. It was a reminder for my follow-up appointment at the hospital. Arthur looked at me puzzled. What's wrong? Making sure he hadn't seen it, I made up an excuse about my phone's battery being low and about to die. He didn't pay it any mind. It could be said that he didn't care about anything related to me that didn't affect his own practical interests. I'm off to work, Grace. Drive safe. Be careful. It was like any other ordinary morning. But Arthur stood at the door, hesitating. I didn't sense anything was amiss. It wasn't until he spoke that I realized. You know I'm severely allergic to broccoli, right? Why would you pack it in my lunch? And this shirt and tie, they're the ones that got dirty yesterday. It hit me then. When you've completely given up on someone, you really can ignore every detail about them. I swapped out Arthur's lunchbox and tossed the dirty shirt and tie into the laundry basket without a second thought. Arthur watched me for a long time before he left, and I couldn't tell what he was thinking. I dropped Jasmine off at kindergarten and stood at the gate watching her skip away. I was seeing my daughter's back less and less. As if by some mother-daughter telepathy, Jasmine suddenly turned and ran back to me. When I knelt down, she crashed into my arms. The little girl's nose was red from crying. She sobbed and made me promise to be happy every day, to be with her for a long, long time. I wiped her nose and tears and coaxed her to go to school, but I couldn't bring myself to make her that promise. Jasmine already had a father who lied. I didn't want her to have a mother who broke her promises too.
It was already afternoon when I came out of my follow-up appointment at the hospital. I quickly hailed a cab to my office to handle my resignation. I was well liked at the company, but when anyone asked why I was leaving, I just said I wanted to travel and clear my head. I threw away everything at my desk, including the hyacinth plant Arthur had personally potted. I used to treasure it. Now, it was just another reminder of how much things had changed. By the time I had packed up and said my goodbyes, it was the usual time to get off work. A few close colleagues insisted on taking me out for a celebratory dinner to mark my escape from the corporate grind. Just as we stepped out of the building, I saw Arthur leaning against his car, smiling at me warmly. "Ooh, looks like we won't be having dinner together tonight." "Looks like someone already has plans. We wouldn't want to be a third wheel." Amidst the teasing from my colleagues, Arthur graciously put his arm around my shoulder, putting on an extreme display of marital bliss. He took my bag and smiled apologetically at my colleagues. "Sorry, everyone, I owe my wife an anniversary celebration because I was busy with work the other day. I'll have to steal her away from your get-together tonight." Arthur always loved to call me my wife in front of others. It had a certain steady, simple charm that matched his personality, reminiscent of a bygone era of pure, unspoken affection.
But in reality, he rarely came to pick me up from work. Most of the time, he only existed in the stories I told my colleagues about him. I got into the car, my eyes glued to the bag in Arthur's hand. My follow-up results and diagnosis were in that bag. Would he find them? If he did, how would he react? Would he genuinely be good to me for the time I had left, or would he completely cut off contact with Charlotte? Would he feel even a shred of guilt for deliberately messing up my life? As it turned out, I had overthought it. After getting into the car, Arthur casually tossed the bag onto the back seat. I couldn't help but say sarcastically, "What's with the sudden pickup? Is Charlotte not busy anymore?" I hadn't wanted to argue with him again, but I was dying. Why should I have to continue playing the part of the happy, harmonious wife? Arthur's laughter actually sounded a little proud. "I told you, we're just childhood friends. Why are you so jealous?" He still thought I was being jealous over Charlotte. He probably thought he was quite charming. I turned my head away from him. "I've already given you an anniversary gift, but as for Jasmine's birthday present, I've already prepared it." Arthur picked up Jasmine and we went straight to the amusement park. This seemed to be the first time our whole family had gone out together in the years since Charlotte returned. Jasmine sat on the carousel, holding both our hands, cheering the entire time. Tonight happened to be the fireworks show, and the park was especially crowded. Jasmine sat on Arthur's shoulders, her eyes filled with the dazzling fireworks. "Grace Foster, you are the only wife I, Arthur Miller, will ever have. Happy 5th anniversary." Looking into Arthur's sincere eyes, I couldn't help but feel a sting in my nose. How could an ordinary person be so talented at acting? If I hadn't seen the text 2 days ago where Arthur asked Charlotte to watch the fireworks with him and got rejected, I might have believed his nonsense. Arthur held Jasmine with one hand and wiped my tears with the other. To outsiders, he was the image of a perfect man. On the way back, Jasmine was probably tired from playing. She quietly leaned against the window, watching the streetlights flash by. In the quiet car, a sudden question from Jasmine made my mind go blank. She blinked her big eyes and asked me, "Mommy, what kind of sickness is late-stage cancer?" My mind immediately went to the handbag on the back seat. I turned to look, and it was still lying in the same spot, untouched. For a moment, all the doubts and explanations I had were stuck in my throat. Arthur took over, his tone serious as he explained to her like a child. "Jasmine, let Daddy tell you something. At the end of our lives, everyone becomes a star in the sky. Late-stage cancer is a sickness that makes people become stars faster." "Will Mommy and Daddy become stars too?" I gradually found my voice, which was dry and hoarse. "Jasmine, how do you know that word?" "Tommy's mom at kindergarten has late-stage cancer. Tommy said that if he doesn't come to kindergarten one day, it's because he's become a kid without a mommy." Jasmine suddenly started sobbing. "I don't want Mommy to become a star. I don't want to be a kid without a mommy." Arthur quickly pulled the car over. I moved to the back seat, picked up Jasmine, and quickly hid the handbag with my medical results under me. "Mommy won't become a star. Even if Mommy becomes a star, I will always be in the sky with Jasmine, protecting her." The little girl sniffled, half believing. "Really?" Arthur answered before I could. "Really, and Daddy too." Arthur had lied so many times. I don't know if Jasmine still believed him, but I certainly didn't. A little girl's emotions come and go quickly. Before we even got home, Jasmine was asleep in my arms. Arthur had just gently placed Jasmine on the bed when his phone rang shrilly. He quickly silenced it and ran out to answer. In that fleeting moment, I saw the caller's name, Charlotte. "Can't you just not go? Is leaving me twice enough? You're going to ditch me again on our makeup anniversary? Arthur, don't you think you're being unreasonable?" Arthur stopped getting dressed, his lips moving for a long time without forming a single coherent word. "I promise this won't happen again." He rushed into the darkness without looking back. abandoning me for Charlotte again. Charlotte had slipped and fallen in the shower. Her stomach was in severe pain and she might lose the baby. In a life or death situation, any excuse Arthur gave would seem plausible. But Arthur, 3 strikes and you're out.
I sat alone on the living room sofa, the bright moonlight spilling through the window onto my diary. After discovering Arthur's diary, I started writing my own. I wrote down my random thoughts, the promises Arthur made but never kept, the times he let Jasmine down, the helplessness I felt in the early stages of my illness, and the numbness that followed, and the process of Charlotte successfully inserting herself into our lives. Everything was tangled into a knot in my mind, with no beginning and no next step. I didn't even notice when Jasmine appeared in the living room or how long she had been watching me. Jasmine's chubby little hands cupped my face. "Mommy, if you're not happy with Daddy, you should separate." I forced a smile. "Mommy's not unhappy. Mommy and Daddy have a great relationship." "Mommy's lying." Even a child could see my true emotions. How could Arthur not know? I remembered the wish Jasmine had just made. But Jasmine doesn't want to be a child without a mommy. Jasmine tilted her head. "But I want Mommy to be happy every day even more." The tangled mess in my head found a new direction. I arranged to meet with Charlotte again. Now, in the quiet hospital room, she sat opposite me with a serene smile. "What do you want to talk to me about?" I showed her a photo of my diagnosis. "I don't have much time left, so you don't have to waste your energy targeting me anymore. You can be with Arthur openly after I'm dead without being labeled as a husband-stealing homewrecker. I just want to spend my last days in peace." Charlotte was clearly skeptical. "You'd resort to such measures just to fight for Arthur? Aren't you afraid of jinxing yourself?" She flicked the phone back at me with 2 fingers, her face full of ridicule. "But this is indeed a deal with no downsides for me." Charlotte leaned back, her expression candid. "It would be best if you were really dead." I was silent for a long time. She was the one who had abandoned Arthur. He was the one who had come to me with a purpose. Yet I was the one who had to endure the most hurt and malice. This world is so unfair. The moment I opened the door, I bumped into a man. He had the familiar scent of hyacinths. I looked up, and sure enough, it was Arthur, who had told me he was going on a business trip for 2 days. He was even holding the lunchbox I had packed for him that morning. "Didn't you say you were leaving for your business trip at noon?" So he was with Charlotte. This was the first time I had ever been cold to Arthur. Before, at my angriest, I would just ignore him. It was a lie to say I didn't care so quickly. My heart still ached with a dull, reluctant pain. But I never expected Arthur to grab my wrist as I passed him. "Grace, I didn't mean to lie to you. It's just that Charlotte really needed someone to take care of her, and I was afraid of making you angry." I couldn't tell if Arthur's anxiety in his eyes was genuine or fake. After all, he was such a good actor, good enough to have fooled me for so many years. "Grace, I promise, this is the last time. Please don't be angry." Charlotte walked between us and took the lunchbox from Arthur's hand. Grace's cooking is really something else. The menu is different every day. Arthur is a lucky man. No wonder Arthur's appetite had increased so much lately. I should have guessed. To think I had unwittingly become a maid for this despicable pair. It made me want to chop off the hand Arthur used to take the lunchbox. Taking and eating? How shameless! Perhaps my recent detachment was too obvious, or my perfunctory attitude was too careless. A strange panic flickered in Arthur's eyes. In the past, he would have pretended not to know me in front of Charlotte, but now he held my hand tightly. "After this is over, I'll take my annual leave and we'll go on a trip, okay? You've been nagging me about it for a while." I didn't want to hear any more of his rambling, empty promises. I pulled my hand away and left. Charlotte raised an eyebrow with a slight smile. Arthur stood there, stunned. This was my 7th day of traveling. In 7 days, I got a new phone and a new number. No one could contact me except Susan. I had been trapped by Arthur's side
for so long that I had almost forgotten how vast and colorful the world was. In the morning, I was feeding seagulls on a ship. In the afternoon, I was in New England, surrounded by picturesque water towns. One day, I was racing to see the sunrise from a mountaintop. The next, I was indulging in a full day of sleep at a hotel. I was squandering the last bit of my life with abandon, completely unaware that Arthur was poring over the diary I had left behind, consumed with regret. No, not left behind. This time, I had discarded it intentionally. There was no point in holding on to a past I wanted to sever completely. On the afternoon before I left, I laid out the diary I had been writing since I got sick on the coffee table in the living room. I coordinated a few of Arthur's favorite outfits and placed them neatly in the closet. I compiled a recipe book of his favorite dishes with every step clearly documented. I listed all the promises he had made to me and Jasmine, but never kept, on sticky notes, and plastered them in conspicuous places. I also wrote a letter for Charlotte. These were my parting gifts for that wretched pair. Men always desire what they can't have. Charlotte hadn't figured it out yet, but I had experienced it firsthand for years. I wanted Charlotte's life, even after she got what she wanted, to be filled with my shadow. I wanted Arthur to live with the guilt and memory of me while he was with her. Arthur had lost his mother-like nanny. He would soon miss the days of having everything handed to him, and Charlotte was not the type to bow down easily. I was really looking forward to seeing the two of them worn down by life in a state of chaotic misery. After sleeping for a whole day, I finally had the energy to turn on my old phone. A flood of messages and missed calls popped up, mostly from Arthur. "Grace, I was wrong. Please don't be angry, okay?" "Grace Foster, you're not a child anymore. Is playing the disappearing act not childish?" "What's the meaning of all those things you left at home? That diary is a lie, right?" "Grace, you're just throwing a tantrum, right? How can you talk about divorce so easily?" "Grace, I was with you through grad school, the long distance, the unemployment. You can't be so heartless." "Grace, Charlotte is just my sister. There's nothing between us." "Grace, I won't contact Charlotte anymore. I was confused for a moment. Please come back." "Grace, I'm a bastard. I didn't know how to cherish you. I was blind. I can't live without you now." "Grace, Jasmine cries for her mommy every night. Can you really bear to leave us?" I was getting a headache from all the unread messages. The moment the phone rang, I answered it subconsciously. "Grace, you finally answered the phone." Arthur's excited voice came from the other end. My heart leapt into my throat at his next words. "Jasmine has had a high fever for a day. I know you don't want to see me, but you can't just ignore Jasmine. She's still calling for mommy in her dreams." Arthur's tone was tinged with grievance and moral blackmail. What a similar conversation. The rainy night that failed to keep Arthur had so easily kept me now. But he didn't know that I video chatted with Jasmine every day. His clumsy, shameless lie fell apart on its own. Just last night, Jasmine was shaking her head and telling me, "Mommy, before you become a star, you have to be a happy person first." It turned out that Jasmine had noticed something was wrong the night I lost my appetite and was throwing up in the toilet. She went back to kindergarten and asked Tommy about his mother's symptoms, deducing that I might also have some kind of late-stage cancer. So the hug in front of the kindergarten wasn't a tantrum, and the question in the car wasn't a casual one. Children are the most sensitive and empathetic. Jasmine, in my nearly 10-year-long dream, was my only angel. When lying failed to bring me back, Arthur went so far as to turn his lie into reality. He forced Jasmine to take a cold shower. After she got a high fever, he dragged his feet on giving her medicine. Finally, he sent me a video of Jasmine lying unconscious on a hospital bed to force me to come back. When I rushed to the hospital, I opened the door to see my daughter, who had just told me, "Mommy's happiness is Jasmine's happiness," now lying pale and quiet on the hospital bed. I had once hoped to use his sense of fatherly responsibility to keep him from going back to Charlotte. I never thought he was a man whose heart I couldn't see. To get me to show up, Arthur didn't hesitate to use Jasmine to soften my heart. Grace, I haven't contacted Charlotte since you left. Do you remember? Jasmine said she didn't want to be a child without a mommy. You should know what I mean. Looking into Arthur's calm, almost eerily so, eyes, a cold sweat broke out on my back. It was only now that I realized I had never truly seen this man. His respectable, simple demeanor, his polite and considerate nature were just a facade he showed the world. His true nature was to do whatever it took to achieve his goals. Arthur still believed the diary I wrote was fake until I showed him a photo of my diagnosis. He was stunned for a long time. Then he suddenly pulled me in by the waist and pressed his warm lips against mine. All my protests were smothered by his kiss. We hadn't been this intimate in a long time. In the past, when I was deeply in love with him, I might have been overjoyed. But now, I only felt disgusted. It wasn't until I was too weak to resist, gasping for breath, that Arthur slowly let go. Grace, you've lost so much weight. Arthur's eyes were like a snake waiting to strike, making me afraid to make a move. I promised Arthur I would get treatment and stay by his side, but he didn't seem to believe me. Perhaps he was afraid I would run away again. He watched me every second. I finally found a moment when Arthur was in the bathroom. With Susan's help, I quickly ran away with Jasmine. I would never rest in peace leaving Jasmine with a person like that. Arthur refused to sign the divorce papers for a long time. He would cause a scene in Susan's department every 10 days or so. My health was getting worse. Sometimes I would sleep for a whole afternoon. I could no longer take care of Jasmine on my own. I knew my time with Jasmine was coming to an end. I had to sever ties with Arthur quickly. Actually, the baby Charlotte miscarried wasn't her ex-husband's. It was Arthur's. 3 months before our anniversary, Arthur and Charlotte had gotten carried away after a night of drinking, resulting in an accidental pregnancy. Susan had accidentally overheard this when Charlotte was hospitalized for her miscarriage. She had wanted to stand up for me, but she ended up hearing their sordid secret at the door and recorded it to help me see clearly. The change in Arthur's attitude towards me triggered Charlotte's sense of crisis. She went so far as to miscarry the baby to win his pity. I found the recording and sent it along with other intimate photos of the two of them to my lawyer. I left the entire divorce process in the lawyer's hands. I didn't have the energy to deal with these trivial matters. Arthur had cheated during the marriage, and the evidence was solid. When he saw how firm my attitude was, he realized he couldn't win me back and had no choice but to sign. He even had a rare moment of conscience and gave me the majority of the assets. But what use was that to a dying person? It was just to alleviate his own guilt. I left everything to Jasmine. Just 2 months after the divorce, I saw Charlotte's official announcement on her social media. What was different from what I had expected was that she didn't seem that happy. She got what she wanted. Maybe she and Arthur were the same kind of people. Everything and everyone becomes tasteless and disposable once they have it. After all, 2 peas in a pod. You could say that after all their years of entanglement, they finally ended up together. But I was very happy. The colon cancer was a misdiagnosis. Charlotte had bribed that doctor to give me a fake diagnosis, hoping to make me give up and leave voluntarily. Now, the doctor who took the bribe has been reported, and Charlotte's misdeeds have naturally been exposed. Now I have money and time, a well-behaved daughter, and a beautiful life. The only thing that was a little disgusting was Arthur's occasional text messages. On the day the divorce was finalized, Jasmine was giggling as she clung to my neck. "Mommy, I want to celebrate my birthday on this day from now on, and change my name too." "Why?" "I learned a new word today. It's called rebirth." "Okay, rebirth." My old phone received another text. Grace Foster, I see it now. Charlotte is dramatic and manipulative. She's a schemer who loves to take advantage of people, and she flirts with everyone, cheating on me. I was so wrong. Is there really no chance for us at all? Arthur missed me while questioning Charlotte about why she had abandoned him once, only to come back and string him along. Why she had deliberately destroyed his happy marriage. But when he was with me, Charlotte was the person he longed for, the one he couldn't have in his youth. The obsession of an idealized past love. Now, the white moonlight had become a bland grain of rice, while the lost mosquito bite had become the cinnabar moray on his heart that he could never find again. Life really is dramatic.